Hello everyone, welcome to this session on creating custom visuals in Microsoft Power BI with TypeScript and D3.j. My name is Mihail Mateev. I am Microsoft MVP for Data Platform and Microsoft Azure, member of Microsoft Regional Director Program, MCT, and community enthusiast, presenting different topics, mostly on Azure and Data Platform. I love Power BI and my background is related to development, so I really enjoy options to demonstrate how to make custom components, how to adapt Power BI in the context of development. In this talk, we will discuss how to set up the dev environment for Power BI custom visuals, how to build some custom visuals, how to debug Power BI components, and how to use custom visuals in your projects. Actually, Microsoft Power BI is flexible with which graphical API you prefer to use, but this framework is actually related to D3.js. What I mean, Power BI visuals are built on top of this library. So D3.js is JavaScript library which is easier to use for creation of different visuals for Power BI, and you will see the most important how to start with Power BI custom visuals and how to implement these visuals in your projects. Also, we will consider how to use these visuals in the best way for specific use cases. Let's see what we will cover in this session. We will talk about anatomy of visual project with all details which are needed to start. We will also cover key visual source files. We will see how to consume data in the visual code. We will stay familiar with Power BI visual tools. We will see how to use data view component. We will see also how to have debugging for Power BI visuals. It is quite specific. And finally, we will cover some additional information about how to submit Power BI visuals to AppSource and how to certify Power BI visual. Also, we will see several nice demos. Let's start our talk from the case, what exactly is Power BI visuals? When you use Power BI, it is possible to have different rich visualizations, including different graphic components. These components we name Power BI visuals. We can have many visuals at the same report, which can represent the same data or different data sources in a specific way. This is the most important which we need to have for every real work with Power BI. We need to visualize our data. And Power BI has a lot of built-in components which you can use out of the box. You can get from the palette different built-in charts and to use it in your reports. But sometimes you need to have some more specific visualizations. And in this case, you need to have additional components. It is possible to have Power BI custom visuals, which can be just added to your project. Or it is possible also to deploy visuals for your organization, where administrators of the organization are able to approve your components, and these components can be imported in the projects from different members of your organization. And at the end, it is possible to use AppSource to publish your components in the marketplace. It is possible to have components in the marketplace which are available for different people, cross-organization, outside of your personal organization. and it is possible also to certify your visuals, which means you will be able to have some kind of additional assessment about the quality of your components. Let's go back to the topic why really for Power BI custom visuals is used D3.js library. D3.js library is a library which is used like foundation, like skeleton for Power BI visual components. And that is the reason actually to be possible to have pretty easy implementation over D3.js. It is possible just to lift and shift components which are already created on D3.js and to make it Power BI visuals. It is possible also to use different frameworks for Power BI visuals, but D3.js is the easiest way because really it is the core library which is used for Power BI visuals which you have out of the box. And you need to know a little D3.js and JavaScript to develop custom visualizations. Another interesting topic is why actually TypeScript is used for Power BI visuals. Why it is not used just JavaScript or another language? First, TypeScript is an object-oriented language developed from Microsoft Corporation and maintained from Microsoft, but with the support of many other software companies. It is one of the most popular languages for strongly typed development based on JavaScript. It is possible to have object-oriented programming concepts using TypeScript with the help of TypeScript compiler. It is the most important. People who are using data platform and BI usually work with strongly typed data and frameworks based on such kind of approach. So it is much easier for them to use such kind of approach where strongly typed language like TypeScript is used and transformation is done via compiler. It is transparent, so these people have no need to know JavaScript for such kind of development. It is something which comes transparently. People need to know some details about strongly typed development, about TypeScript library, and also to D3.js, but it is not needed to go deep in different specific practices and tips and tricks related to pure JavaScript. If we take a look at the Power BI visuals placeholder, we have different tools which are very useful for tracking of data changes, events, and what we need actually to develop custom visuals. It is possible to have a reload of your source data when there are some updates. It is possible also to have automatical reload every time when your component is changed. It is also possible to watch data view where to see details about data structure which is bind for your visual. Usually you can see this as JSON structure, and it is possible also to download your data view, which is possible later to be analyzed for future use. And it is possible also to have visualization of your data in the placeholder where you see exactly how your data is represented based on the implementation of your custom visual control. Let's now see the life cycle of Power BI visuals. We have init, where we initialize the component and its parts, and after that we have many times update during the life cycle, where component state is changed based on different events, and finally at the end of the life cycle we have destroy method, which actually is destroying everything which is created as a part of Visual tree. That's the most important on the high level, but probably one of the most important details are related to data binding. People usually need to understand how data is binded to the functions, exactly how it happens in which files, and what we need to be configured or what need to be added in specific files. You will see later in this presentation the main file, which contains the logic for visual, usually is visual.ts. It can be changed in configuration files, but in this file we have method update, and in this method update are passed options as an argument. Options data view includes all data for visualization which you need, and this data is passed by dragging and dropping columns into Power BI client. I mean, it is possible to be done with Power BI desktop or via powerbi.com. Data views actually represent list of views which we can have. Usually it is used only one view, but it is not mandatory. It is possible to have many different views in your component. You can see the following snippet that in the method update for this method we have options like parameters, and we have for these options inside data views, and data views first view in our first item is exactly what by default is used to have data in our custom logic. It is possible to be different. It is possible to change this logic in a way more comfortable and adaptive for your component. Data binding is another important part which we need to clarify. It is very important to have bindings between your source data and your visual components. Your source data looks in this way, like JSON structure, and it is possible to have bindings between different components. From one side, you have a need to configure in capabilities.js specific configurations, which will lead to the proper binding for your components. You have different categories, and it is one of the things which you need to know, because more often we have binding which is related to categories. We have a description of categories. We have also description of values, and we have data binding, where we have actually for table rows inside data view the exact mapping in a way which is appropriate to visualize your content. To understand better structure of Power BI custom visuals, is important to know some details about anatomy of visual project, exactly structure of folders and files inside it. Let's take a look at the structure. We have directory assets. Assets actually includes all content which is related to icons, screenshots, and can be used in your custom visual. Especially for icons, it is the place where you need to put your images which will represent icons in the visual palette. This is the next folder. Here you will have packages from distribution. When you build your custom visuals, actually your package will be placed inside this folder, and it is possible to have there everything which is needed to load component in specific projects. The next folder is source. Inside source we have the whole TypeScript and JavaScript which is needed to generate your custom visual. In the folder style you have all visual styles which you need for your visual, and we have few more files. Gitignore is used to not track specific files in your repository. Capabilities.json is a very important file. It is used to have data mappings and to have options for your component. The logic how to represent your structure of data and mappings is exactly there. It is also possible to consider package.json. Package.json is needed to have configuration for your packages which will create for distribution. pbiviz.json is used for description of your component, which will be used as metadata when you publish your component, and tsconfig is used for main configuration, which is very important for your TypeScript compiler. Now we will have a more deeper look at the key visual source files which we have in Power BI custom visual project. And let's start with pbiviz.json, one of the most important files. This file is the main configuration file for your visual. It contains metadata as well as information about the files needed to build your visual. You see there many details like name of the visual, display name, universal ID, GUID, which is used to identify visual, the class name which is used, version, description, URL for GitHub and for the support, API version, and many different details. You can see also information about the author of this visual and information where will be default icon, where is possible to find a style description, and where is placed the capabilities.json file. Let's look at the capabilities.json file. This is probably the second most important file in our Power BI visual component project. In this file, you have several sections very important for all settings. Capabilities.json is used to provide information about the host for your visual, and also there are all properties on the capabilities model which are optional. It is possible to skip it, and also in capabilities.json you can define rules and conditions which can be added against each field. In any case, it is important to know several parts of settings which are inside this file. Data roles is the first one. In data roles is defined data fields that your visual expect. Data roles are very important because you need to have fields from your data model, and without valid information there, your visual will not work. The section data view mappings describes how you want your data to be mapped, and the section objects describes how your property panel options will be configured. The root objects of visual capabilities are data roles and data view mappings. Data roles define data fields that your visual expects. To define fields, you need to have an array of data view role objects which defines exactly properties which we need. You can see there in the schema how exactly these data roles can be used. You have specific display name and you have the property which is used and configured from the palette. Data view mappings define how you want data be mapped. Each valid mapping produces a data view, but we currently need for most of components only one. Another important component are objects. Objects are used to define the property panel options in our Power BI custom visual. Objects describe customizable properties associated with the visual, which can be configured in different ways. Each object can have multiple properties, and for each property has a specific type which is associated. You can see the high-level object description here. You will see also objects implementation in the demos. Another important part is how to implement highlighting. Highlighting is functionality where you can have interactively by selection or via other rules to highlight part of our visual, part of data which is related to this visual, and we can do this exactly in capabilities file also. By default, highlight is disabled and you need to enable it to be possible to use this functionality. It is possible also to have multiple selections in your component, so it is possible to have several highlighted areas. Settings TypeScript file is another very important part of Power BI custom visual project. Especially in this file are defined mappings between formatting options available for Power BI and variables inside the visual source code. In this way, it is possible to have visualization of the exact values which you have in your Power BI client, powerbi.com or Power BI desktop application. You can see in the schema how it looks. Actually, when you have a Power BI visual, it is possible, based on the settings, to see values which are set in your visual, and you can change these values and update in this way the real content of your component data model. To understand how custom visual works, we need to go in details how data is consumed in the visual component code. And it is something which is happen in visual TypeScript file. Again, I am adding notes that the main file which is responsible for these functionalities can be with different name. Visual TS is the default one, but it is possible to be configured project where another file will be the main responsible for visualization. You can see here that actually it's import data view interface from Power BI module, and after that it is added statement which is also important. dataview is equal to options dataview's member, which will be used to represent the current view for our component. When we have generated custom visual project, as you will see later, there are some default values. You need to replace some default values with specific parts of your code related to data model, which means that data view which is used will contain specific information which can be used for different properties in a way to have bidirectional relation between what you see and your data model. The next important thing which we need to discuss is related to Power BI visual tools and sequence of activities which we need to have to create custom visuals. First, we need to have Power BI visual tools installed. What means that we need to have Node.js packages which will be installed into our computer, and we need to install also different dependencies which also are needed, including from Node.js and D3.js libraries. We need to have also certificate setup to be possible to use Power BI development mode, and to test your components you need to have installed certificate. And the last step is to enable developer visual for your project. That means you need to enable this mode in your client. Doesn't matter if it will be powerbi.com or desktop. And after that, you are able to add your component to specific report. Let's see now how we can use data view in our development and testing. It is very useful when we have a Power BI report and we have some component inside it, that it is possible using tools for the specific component in edit mode to see exactly what kind of data we have behind the component. And it is possible to expand this structure, which looks like JSON, and to see different components. In this way, you are able actually to see at exact moment the state of your data model, which is very, very useful for debugging and checking if your component work properly. Debugging is another critical part of development for Power BI custom visuals. It is not very typical. We need to consider several things. It is quite difficult to have appropriate workflow like for other projects, because using a breakpoints is actually challenging. JavaScript is entirely reloaded every time when visual is updated, and breakpoints are lost, and it is not possible when you have debugging and refreshing the component to use these breakpoints. That's the reason to need to have debugger statements in your code, which is recommended when you have development. It is also recommended to turn off auto reload while using debugger in your code. Another challenge is to have a management of exceptions, because usually exceptions are eaten by Power BI service. This is done by default, because managing of specific cases which are not predictable is very critical, and Power BI service need to actually provide stable work of the whole application and to prevent any kind of unpredictable behavior. That's the reason to be not possible to have typical usage of exceptions. You need to have code programmatically to catch and lock your exception, and it is something which we will see on the next slide. It is recommended to have similar code to manage exceptions, and after that to use decorator to add this method to other your methods. And now we need to see also some details about submission of Power BI visuals to AppSource. And let's start with what is exactly AppSource. For those of you who are not familiar, AppSource is a place to find software as a service applications and add-ins for Microsoft products and services. AppSource connects many users of Office 365, Dynamics 365, and other business applications. It is very important to know several details about AppSource before to submit your request for AppSource to have your visuals on the marketplace. You need to take a look at Power BI visuals guidelines and also how to test your custom visual. And after that, you need to send specific request via email, including your package plus specific information which is added in documentation. The first step is to send this email to Power BI Visuals team which will review your request. If everything is fine, you will receive email with structure of the package which you need to use to make your submission to AppSource, plus you will have instructions how to do it. And on the next step, you will need to send your submission to AppSource for publishing of your component. The XML package is required in order you want to submit your visual through Office Developer Center. And at the last, we will see how to certify the Power BI visual. It is another process which is different from publishing to AppSource. What means to certify Power BI visuals? Certified Power BI visuals in the marketplace meet specified code requirements from Power BI team, and it is tested and approved. These components need to pass specific requirements regarding to the guidelines. There should be access from the Power BI team also to the source code to review some details. If you have uncertified Power BI visuals, it doesn't mean that you have unsafe visuals exactly. Just your visuals do not pass some specific guidances which are required for certified visuals. And now it is time for demos. We will see how to create custom visual and how to add different references, how to update the behavior, and how to embed in custom reports this visual. For our demo, we have already installed Node.js and some dependencies, and in specific folder in PowerShell, we will create with Power BI tools for Node.js, a new project. So it will be the pbiviz new and the name of component. I put it the name circle start. There is some time till this structure is created. Let's now start Visual Studio Code and see the structure which we have. So this is actually the current project. You see most important parts. You see pbiviz.json. Here it is possible to see the main settings which are required. We can see also the settings for compiler, including the main file with logic. Capabilities. JSON is one important file which already we discussed with many different settings. You see here different data roles. This is the default template with category data and measure data, and you have also different mappings in the end of this file. Package.json includes information about the whole package which will be created. In assets folder you can see the default icon. It is possible also to see the node models which are included, and in the source folder you can see from one side settings file. Inside settings file you can have also very important information about your settings. Here you can see the mappings between formatting options available in Power BI. And finally, the initial Visual TS, the file where we have the main logic. You see here that we have importing of different interfaces, and in Visual class there is implementation of iVisual interface. You have update method, which already we discussed is actually executed when we have any kind of changing in our visual, when we have some activities. And in the constructor you see the options. Actually options pass the whole data model. By default we have in our component logic which shows how many times our component is updated. And now we will see how it works in a real project. Now we will start our Node.js server, which will serve the content with pbiviz start. It will take several seconds till your component is available for dev testing. I have already created sample project which is uploaded into powerbi.com. What first we need to do? We need to go to settings, and after that we need to go to developer option, enable custom visual debugging, apply. After that it will be possible in edit mode to update our project with adding or changing some settings, including our custom Power BI visual. Let's now choose edit mode and try to select one of the components. You see on the right side the palette with components. If we change here our component to be one of the prepared for development, this one, which we already have, you see update count here. If we save this project and after that we can refresh our project, we will see now that we have the new component with very simple interface there. If we go and say edit, we can be able to change our component with another one, but every time when something is changed, you can see when we add again this component, update count is 0. If we make some changes every next time, update count will stay with one more, like now. Because of limitation of the time for this session, I already did some changes in this Power BI custom visual project, and we will see the latest state with some changes. Let's take a look at the project now. We have added some additional content here, exactly about the properties which we need in capabilities.json. We added circle color, which will be used for our component. We added also thickness of the frame for this component. And let's see also what we have in other files. In pbiviz.json is added all information which is needed to create a package which need to be loaded. It is required to have fulfilled most of properties. And in ts in config.json we have no specific changes. And next, let's now go to Visual TS. In Visual TS, I added additional logic related to support of data passing from our context in our update method. You see here, actually, we have first data view, and from this data view we already use some attributes which are needed also for styling. You can see here circle color, for example, and circle thickness. In this way we will have the final state which looks like ready for use component. Let's now start Node.js server serving the new updated component. It takes again a few seconds till our component is available for testing in PowerBI.com. Let's now see how our project is updated. Checking the same report, I will go to edit mode. We'll choose the same component and we'll change this component with our custom visual. You can see that we have the same shape like the original component, and we can also change settings which are for color and for thickness. So we have our first component ready for use. Let's now see how to create package for our component and import it in another project, for example, in Power BI desktop. I will stop the service which we executing and will run pbiviz package. So it takes some time till our package template is ready. And the full package is created. Now I created the same report in Power BI desktop using the same source, and here I will try to import custom visual from file. It is our package, so I'm choosing this component. There is additional message for confirmation that we want to use, and now we can try to change this component already used with the new one. You see, actually we have the same value here, just the formatting of the number is different. I intentionally left it in this way to be possible to see the difference between the original component and those one which we created during this demo. So we have our first package created and ready for use and import in different projects. This was the most important which you need to know to start work on custom Power BI visuals, creating own solutions. Thank you for attendance and enjoy the conference.